People who eat at McDonald's, why? Plot twist. Oppa's McDonald's marketing team and were giving them feedback, ideas. Because sometimes those dehydrated onions on a double cheeseburger call me, and I must answer. A lot of small towns around the world only have one food place open past 9 p.m. Is McDonald's. They are always there for you, even when everyone else in your life isn't. Most are open 24 hours and at 1 a.m. It was a special treat when I was a kid. Who is a good person who turned out to be pretty bad, evil? Jimmy Savile. If you're not from the UK, Google him. I grew up watching Jim'll Fix It. From the mid-70s to turn of the 80s. His outward persona was that of a saint. Starting as a DJ, he spent his entire life running marathons for charities. Supporting charities. They estimate he raised 40 to 50 million British pounds that went direct to charities over his lifetime. He donated time to do public safety announcements. Many UK folks on here late 40s onward will remember, clunk click every trip. He was knighted by the Queen for his contributions to British society. Before he died, 2011, there had been investigations into sexual misconduct. But nothing really came to light in public. They now believe that he was the most prolific sexual predator that Britain has ever experienced. With around 300 potential victims over 60 years. Many of them children. Savile was one of those people who I didn't grow up following. But for most of my life. I'm 51. When I heard his name mentioned, I had the utmost respect for him. I still remember very clearly when all of his atrocities began to be publicly disclosed. I was disgusted by him and profoundly sad. More than I expected. That this person who I had respected had betrayed that respect. His work for society was, at least originally, genuine if not sincere to his death. But at the same time, he was quietly evil. Despicably preying on vulnerable people and kids. People have gone back and thoroughly scrutinized his interviews and autobiographies and believe there are several components that could be interpreted as him regretting things he's done. Trying to admit what these were. And veiled calls for help. I have no sympathy for him. But he must have been a tortured individual. Stephen Collins, the pastor, dad from Seventh Heaven. That one YouTuber that groomed a minor. Along with the other YouTuber that groomed a minor. And that other one. And that other one. And that other one. And that other one. Jared from Subway. O.J. Simpson. Bill Cosby. People who suffer from depression. What was the worst advice you've gotten? Any advice that started with, just implies something is no hassle. Easy. Not a problem. Just go out. Just exercise. Just be happy. Just think less. My personal favorite. Do things you like. It's kind of the thing. You can do them but you don't like doing them anymore. You're emotionally flat and exhausted, and frankly it's even worse to go through the motions of a thing you used to love. Think about people who have it worse. Thanks. Now I'm depressed and feeling guilty about it. I got 3 advices from 3 different people. 1. You'll be fine. 2. Depression doesn't exist. 3. Just be happy. Quote. Ditch your meds and do acid a few times, it'll fix everything. My dad told me to have kids, which makes me wonder about him. What is the most interesting fact you know about WW2? Nobody knows exactly how many people died. Historians estimate the number to be between 70 to 85 million. The war was so widespread there was no way to get an accurate body count when all was said and done. To this day they are still finding the occasional body. Fanta was invented by Germany during WW2. Coca-Cola stopped selling syrup to Germany once the US declared war. Coca-Cola Germany used beet sugar, whey, and apple pumice, useless scraps at that time, to come up with a Coca-Cola substitute and called it Fanta. After the war, the US Coca-Cola took the rights to the drink back. Wilhelm Canaris, the head of Abwehr, German military intelligence, was so disgusted by what he saw during the invasion of Poland that he started working against Hitler. Using his position in Abwehr, he set up ways to smuggle Jews out of occupied areas, helped with attempted assassination attempts on Hitler, and is believed to even have been passing on intel to the Allies. He was eventually found out, arrested and executed. In much of the Pacific Theater, disease amongst soldiers claimed more lives than combat. A chemist in Denmark dissolved the gold Nobel Prize medals of 2 Jewish German winners in aqua regia and hid them in plain sight so the Nazis couldn't confiscate them. The gold was recovered after the war and the medals recast and returned. https en.wikipedia.org/wiki/aqua_regia. More of an anecdotal story from my family. My granddad's dad fought in WW2. He was from former Czechoslovakia, which was annexed by Germans, so he was part of the German soldier contingent on the Russian front. Apparently, one time during a patrol in some woods, his squad met the enemy Russian patrol. They literally stumbled into each other as his patrol was cresting a hill which muffled all sound and didn't let a light shine through. At that point, he thought he was dead. He was just meters away from the enemy squad. 3 carrying automatic rifles. 1 carrying a heavy machine gun. His squad was similarly equipped, but the fighting would come to some brutal close-quarter combat. But as they were all frozen in shock and hopelessly out of position, somehow all of them got the exact same idea: to ignore the other squad and just keep moving. Nobody said a word. Nobody moved for their weapon. They just kept moving and ignoring each other. As soon as they were around a hill and a reasonable distance away, they just bolted. The other patrol doing presumably the same. So that's how he survived the war. People who realized they had bad therapists. What were the red flags? I was 13. The therapist was an older woman who, upon first meeting me, insisted to my mother that I was on drugs. I wasn't, and that, clearly, my father and/or brother were molesting me. My father and brother have never, ever touched me inappropriately. This was one sick bitch who needed help herself. Recently started therapy and had about 5 to 6 sessions with the same guy. The last 2 sessions he was either late or had shared some bad news going on in his life, and had multiple uninterrupted rants of 15+ minutes or more where the subject matter was only tangentially at the absolute best. It wasn't, during those rants, name-dropped public figures in my sphere and told secrets about them. Unprofessional and sloppy. So I went to child therapy back in the day. But the therapist always had my dad in the room with my sisters and I. Because of that, I was never able to tell her about how he was abusing my sisters and I. I remember every time I answered a question, I'd be looking at him for an okay on the answer. She literally never caught on. I had a long report written by a psychologist who had given me a thorough assessment. The therapist on the 3rd appointment told me the report was probably wrong and I should just basically try harder. When our marriage counselor told us he had been divorced 6 times. The one I went to after my suicide attempt at 16 had some not so compassionate opinions. My very first session, one thing I told her was that I was bullied a lot at school. Her response was, "Well, suicide attempts are usually done in order to manipulate others. So since you were capable of that, Did you ever consider maybe you were the bully? Quote, I really never spoke to her again. I had to go weekly because of my attempt. But I just sat in silence every session until I could stop going. Equating my suicide attempt to me being a manipulator after knowing me for probably less than 20 minutes was just, no.
Subscribe, my brothers.